welcome to Rising. I'm so excited to get in today's show. We've got a lot of great content planned. Obviously, Congress's long-awaited UFO meeting taking place later today, and we'll bring you news as that develops. But first, we've got another big story to get into. Good morning, Jessica. How are you?
Good morning. That's right, Robbie. Republicans in Congress have filed a brief attempting to block Hunter Biden's misdemeanor tax plea deal. It's expected later today. An attorney for the Republican-led Ways and Means Committee implored the judge overseeing Hunter's case to refrain from accepting his plea until testimony from two IRS whistleblowers can be reviewed by the court. The GOP argues Hunter Biden, quote, appears to have benefited from political interference, which calls into question the propriety of the investigation.
Well, Hunter Biden will be traveling to Delaware federal court today to plead guilty before a judge, and that deal would allow him to avoid prison time. This is related to the gun charge, the tax charges, etc. We're going to find out. So the deal is, was offered, it was agreed to, but the judge still has to have their say on it. So that's going to be later today. So big day for Hunter Biden. Obviously, this is all unfolding at a time where Republicans have now produced two whistleblowers from the IRS who say that the investigation was handled improperly. We've heard from them now. Shapley and Joseph Ziegler, the later more recently, going into how this investigation by David Weiss, the special prosecutor, was in fact thwarted in their view by the Justice Department. Now, interestingly enough, David Weiss himself hasn't really backed that up. So you have kind of conflicting accounts, and it's not clear who's right about all of this, and that's where we are. But the deal is presumably going through.
Yeah, interesting. David Weiss, also a Trump appointee, but it seems to me that the brief is filed with the sole accusation that the plea negotiations were tainted by improper conduct at various levels of the government. So it sounds like they just believe this is government interference, and that's why this plea deal should not stand. I don't know if that means they think these two whistleblowers should have been heard, they should have been looked into throughout their legal process, and because they didn't, it was just this willful neglect.
Right. I mean, we're just hearing from them now. We're hearing from them. We heard from Joseph Ziegler last week, I believe. Right. So this deal was put together before that information came out. So I think it's worth wondering whether this deal is still is fair, which is not. I don't want to lock Hunter Biden up for a million years because of gun-related things or drug-related things that I don't really think should be illegal anyway. I understand leniency, but we need to understand whether there was this influence campaign going on that actually did involve Joe Biden. And now we have claims being made by Hunter Biden associates that Joe Biden was on the calls to these foreign business interests. And that is really, really concerning. I mean, that would validate a lot of what Republicans and conservatives are saying about the crookedness of the Bidens, but we're just kind of like, no, nothing to see here. We're proceeding. Okay, yeah, Hunter's in a little bit of trouble. He's getting a slap on the wrist. Forget about it.
Right. And so it seems to me that there's a lot here that's being called into question by the FBI. So there's an informant that claimed that Zlochevsky has 17 audio tapes, including two with then Vice President Biden, current President Biden, and then 15 remaining with Hunter Biden. And a number of Republicans have questioned whether they exist. Right? These are audio tapes that I think they reviewed during the first impeachment attempt. And so they're saying that Grassley, by releasing this whistleblower document, the FD 1023, is, really ruining his reputation in the oversight, realm. The FBI is saying that, you're neglecting proper intelligence protocols by releasing this, etc. But it sounds like they've reached
proper
a plea
intelligence
deal.
Protocols not being followed. Oh
I know.
No, not that. I'm just beside myself with grief that the G-men have not been able to hide more relevant information from the public. I mean,
brazen disregard of the safety of FBI sources and the integrity of its investigations.
Is national security threatened, Jessica?
Guilty.
Is national security threatened? I'm sure it is.
I'm sure. That's always what's going down when they say
yeah, it's just
like
silly.
this.
Look, the FBI has certainly lost the trust of Republicans, and I think for good reasons. It used to not have, have the trust of the left. I mean, it still doesn't have the trust of the left, but there was a lot of profound skepticism of law enforcement, of the FBI in particular, among progressive people. But now, if you're a Democrat, you're part of the team that, for some reason, reveres expertise and bureaucracy and government workers and the people who know better in law enforcement and national intelligence. Can't question them. That's just that's the personality of today's Democratic Party, and the personality of today's Republican Party is deep skepticism of all of those institutions and then some. You can say a skepticism that goes too far and opens itself up to wild theories, fine, but there's no skepticism whatsoever from the mainstream media and from the Democratic Party.
I do take issue with Grassley's senior counselor, Chris Kolsnick, who spent 19 years with him, right? He said, I would have never advised him to do that, releasing the whistleblower document to the public, and said, this is like a new guy. Grassley spearheaded the efforts, oversight efforts against the Reagan administration. And then he goes on to say, we left him quite an oversight legacy. Basically taking credit for Grassley's work. I do understand that many people who are congressional staff do the work that then the congressperson gets credit for. But we left him quite an oversight legacy, and he's put all that in jeopardy. Between back then and now, it's like night and day. I would say the major difference between the Iran-Contra hearings and these hearings are that those were able to be public. Democrats voted that these would not be public. I think this would be a very different scenario if this was a public hearing about corruption in the United States.
Yeah, do Democrats believe there's corruption? I believe there's corruption. You believe that there's corruption. The Republicans believe that there's tons of corruption. They've made the whole, investigating the weaponization of the federal government is their major crusade right now. Do Democrats concede anymore that there's corruption, or just law enforcement says, no, everything's fine, and they say, okay, thank you?
Yeah, real bad situation when, corruption's worth looking into when it's the other guys. That is not how you run a functioning country or especially a democracy. And so I don't know. I think now that he has pled guilty, isn't it worth us seeing, a little bit of the evidence that the Justice Department has that they haven't been able to release, that the Oversight Committee reviewed that they haven't been able to release? Is it really a matter of national security? It sounds to me that a lot of this stuff has been put to bed. The dealings of, Viktor Shokin and Burisma in 2016. How could this be a matter of national security today? Because there's a war in Ukraine. I don't think this is relevant for that.
Yeah, I think we need to be able to decide these things for ourselves. So we'll see what happens in court later today with Hunter Biden. I'm sure we'll be following up on that later today or tomorrow. And we will have more Rising for you right after this.